undecided. Joining me now for more on this, Assemblyman Hakeem Jeffries of New York's 57th District, political blogger Liza Sabotage is publisher of thedailygotham.com, political strategist Trace Anderson, who is the founder of CFB Strategies, and Katie Manzi, she's executive vice president of the New York Young Republican Club. Welcome to all of you. This is a kind of an unprecedented mayoral election in that we had term limits where you only got 2 terms, and Mayor Bloomberg's running for a 3rd term. Kind of seems like the white elephant in the room. Nobody's talking about it. Could that at any point backfire on Bloomberg? You know, a lot of people say he just bought the 3rd term. He changed the rules in the game. You're on the Bloomberg side. Do you think that'll affect him in the long run from voters?
I personally don't, and the reason I don't think that, you know, it was a big issue 8, 9 months ago or a year ago when it happened. I think for the average voter, most people, it's not even on their radar screen. For activists, for hardcore Democrat voters, absolutely, it's an issue. But for the average person, I don't think it matters.
I absolutely disagree, and actually there's a sense of that there's not enough time for anybody else but Bloomberg to be out there in the open and actually reaching out voters. It is difficult in New York City to campaign. We're talking about a huge city where most of the media is actually very pro-Bloomberg, and so there's a sense of resignation almost, and that in itself, you know, it is bad because, you know, it's not because they like him, but because they understand that he can buy himself into City Hall.
Well, Michael Bloomberg once said that it would be disgraceful to legislatively repeal term limits, and then he turned around and disgraced himself and perhaps engineered one of the most undemocratic power grabs in the history of our democracy. I think it is going to be a permanent stain on his legacy. It's going to have a dramatic impact on what the voters do on November 3rd. And there's no amount of money that he can spend to clean up the mess that he's created.
Well, if we're going to go with that argument, I mean, does that also apply to all the other Democrat city council members, Speaker Quinn, all these other Democrat members that have said statements in the past, yet they're running again because of the law that Mayor Bloomberg
passed? I think that's the fact of the matter, is that a lot of the people that I represent, they really do care. You know, in my club, they care a lot about term limits. That, you know, people talk a lot about, should we vote for Mayor Bloomberg, should we not? And personally, I'll tell you something, I don't even support term limits because I think that an elected official should be accountable throughout all terms, you know, for re-election. I think it keeps them honest. However, I think that the term limits issue should be a reason to come out and vote, not only for mayor, but also down the line for city council. If you really had a problem with that, which so many people across the city did, go out and vote in the city council races too.
Right. Do you think they did it when they did it so that people would forget? Because voters tend to have a pretty short attention span when it comes to big political issues.
In fact, I think Michael Bloomberg, as well as the Bloomberg campaign, were counting on voters forgetting, and in fact they said that. But what we saw in the most recent Democratic primaries was 4 or 5 different incumbents go down. All of them, with the exception of one who wasn't in the council at the time, had voted yes to extend term limits, and several survived by the skin of their teeth, who all voted to extend term limits. So I think the voters clearly...
Absolutely. And you know, and Christine Quinn is in deep trouble because of supporting this, you know, power grab. And so I'm the first one to say that, you know, the Democrats definitely that supported Michael Bloomberg and his power grab are in deep trouble. He is correct in saying that a lot, in the primaries, a lot of those people that voted yes for Bloomberg are not there anymore to run for re-election. So it is important, you know, to, I'm as partisan as can be, but I'm also, you know, very thoughtful that it is something that anybody involved in that is going to haunt them for the rest of their political careers.
And this is an issue that has resonated across racial lines, cultural lines, different neighborhoods, black and Latino communities, white ethnic communities. You got to remember that 90% of the people last year in New York City, you can't get New Yorkers to agree on anything, but 90% of the folks said we want a referendum to decide whether a 3rd term is permissible. That crosses a wide spectrum of New Yorkers, and so it is an issue that will resonate.
I think it's important to point out, I mean, they made the point that in Democratic primaries, absolutely, these people went down. But the people that vote in Democratic primaries, or Republican primaries for that matter, are people that are very, very engaged in politics. These are your activists. These are people that have very strong opinions. And the whole grand scheme in a general election, we're talking about a general election here, that's a very small percentage, maybe 10, 15% maximum.
Never underestimate the power of the activists. Ever. I mean, I used to work for Consumer Affairs Department at Colgate-Palmolive, and the CEO at the time used to say, each and every complaint that comes into the company means that there's about 50, 100 other people who are listening to this activist. So never underestimate the power of the activist.
And Liza, I completely agree with you on that. In this case, I don't think it resonates citywide to that level.
The undemocratic power grab is an important issue, but there's several other issues that I think are going to resonate.
Absolutely.
Right. You brought up a good point we'll get to with the low voter turnout also. I mean, we saw that with the primaries. It was very low voter turnout. And then there was another election where there was even lower voter turnout.
Right.
If there's low voter turnout on Tuesday, which candidate does that help?
Thompson. I mean, I think it clearly helps Thompson.
Really?
In the grand scheme, I don't think it's going to help him near enough. But, you know, low voter turnout, like I said, it's just like a primary. There's people that really care, that are really engaged in politics. Those are the people that turn out. In this case, in the end, I think it's going to hurt him. People don't know who Thompson is. Nobody knows this guy.
Right.
I mean, who is he? I mean, when you go in the booth, they're going to recognize one name. That's Mike Bloomberg.
Right.
Well, I don't know. I mean, he has been the controller of New York City for 8 years, and people have voted him in, and by wide margins also. So, I'm
on the Democratic line.
Right. Which brings up another good point, spending. Bloomberg spent quite a lot of money, millions of dollars. I want to say $85 million of his own money on a re-election bid. Thompson only spent $6 million. Clearly that helped Bloomberg. You ask a lot of New Yorkers, they don't know who else is running for mayor. They only know that Bloomberg is running.
Well, the fact that the Bloomberg money machine has spent $85 million and approximately half of the people in New York City either want to see Bill Thompson as mayor or are undecided says it all from my point of view in terms of the fact that he was just simply been unable to convince a significant number of people despite spending an obscene amount of money, propaganda, media blitz, that has taken place, that another 4 years will not be good for a significant number of people, particularly working families, middle-class New Yorkers, senior citizens, whose quality of life hasn't improved during the last 8 years. In fact, in many instances, it's gotten worse.
I don't know where the figure half of the people in New York City comes from. I mean, the approval polls that I see every day, Mayor Bloomberg's approval rating 60%. I think the poll that we just saw said 53 to 37 with a 10% undecided margin.
And I think, as I mentioned, that's almost half, which is about 47%.
But 37% is not.
But the point being, though,
that's not even close.
I mean, I live in a neighborhood that, Bloomberg might say that it's representative of the people that vote for him, but I live basically in the lightning rod of his war against middle-class renters in New York City. And I live in Stuyvesant Town. She does too. But I've been much longer there, and I'm rent-stabilized. And so there's a lot of people who are absolutely disgusted. $85 million when we're in one of the worst economic crises to have hit this country, and when there's a lot of people in New York City hurting because they can't pay rent, because the unemployment benefits are not coming in, and how many businesses are completely blacked out in New York City where you walk down the street and there's just,
I want to jump in here because the rent hikes, we saw this, it angered a lot of the people in the community. Bloomberg approved, it's his board that approved the rent hike. Do you think there'll be some backlash? Thompson was at the protest for it. Bloomberg was very smug in his response to the rent hike, thinking it was okay.
New York City is a luxury city, and he has made it very clear that if you can't pay rent in New York City, you're out. So,
I completely disagree on that role. He's never said it's a luxury city. Okay, first of all, he has the most aggressive, unaffordable housing pricing plan in the country and in the history of this city. In the history of this city.
I'm gonna have to jump in on that note.
No, for low income housing units in the country.
Well, what is the plan? Because
I'm talking about middle class renters.
I understand. My rent is high too.
You either have to be extremely poor or extremely rich in order to be in his radar. Us, the people in the middle, out, and that's the problem.
Yeah, I think let's look at the facts under the Bloomberg administration. Poverty has increased. The rich have gotten richer. The poor have gotten poorer.